What if one of the greatest spiritual teachers of all time was never who you were told? What if the Church's carefully crafted story of faith left someone out? Someone whose presence didn't just support the message of Christ, but completed it. For centuries, Mary Magdalene has been painted as the repentant sinner, the fallen woman, the one Jesus forgave and rescued. A background figure, a side note, important, but never central. But what if that image is only a fragment of the truth? An edited role designed not just to hide who she really was, but who you really are. Beneath layers of doctrine and dogma lies another Magdalene, one who was anything but secondary, a woman remembered in hidden texts as teacher, visionary, and intimate companion in the deepest spiritual sense. Not a symbol of shame, but a symbol of wisdom. Not a warning, but a doorway. In forbidden gospels and long-buried writings, her voice still whispers. She speaks of the soul's ascent, of freedom from dark forces, and of a path to God that begins not in temples or priests, but in you. So why was her story rewritten? Why was her sacred number 13 linked to her name, to the cycles of the moon, to ancient symbols of the feminine, turned into an omen of misfortune and fear? Perhaps because the truth she carried, truths of balance, of union, of remembrance, still have the power to awaken humanity. Deep down, something inside you has always known that the official story of Magdalene was never the full truth. Because sometimes truth can't be told, it can only be felt. That's why you're here. And perhaps on some level, you're beginning to remember a different history than the one you were given. In this video, we're going to uncover the fragments of Magdalene's hidden teachings, the wisdom the Church fought for centuries to suppress. We'll explore the vision she carried of a divine union long forgotten, and discover why her presence and message might matter more today than at any other time in history. What you're about to hear isn't just another story about Mary Magdalene, it's a mirror. And in that mirror, you may glimpse a missing piece, not only to the story of Christ, but to your own soul. Short pause. If you're new here, welcome to Gnostic Codex. Here we explore hidden teachings, Gnostic perspectives, and the deeper layers of spiritual awakening beneath religious dogma. If this kind of remembrance resonates with you, consider subscribing, leaving a like to support this work, and sharing your thoughts in the comments. Your reflections often become part of the collective remembering. Now, let's go back to where her story was split in two. To understand Mary Magdalene, we have to step far beyond stained glass, Sunday sermons, and the familiar story you were handed. Because the figure you were taught to see is not the one the earliest followers of Jesus seem to have known. In the official Gospels, Magdalene is introduced as a woman from whom 7 demons were cast out. She appears at pivotal moments, standing at the cross when most disciples fled, watching where Jesus was laid, and being the first witness of the resurrection. Just that should give you pause. If she were truly insignificant, why does every gospel agree that she was the one to see him first? Before Peter, before John, before any of the others. But outside the canon, in texts hidden for centuries, a different picture appears. In one ancient gospel bearing her name, found in the sands of Egypt, Mary is not shown as a fallen woman crawling toward forgiveness. She is portrayed as the disciple who most deeply understood the teachings of the Master. In that account, the disciples are afraid and confused after his departure. It is Mary who rises to speak. She shares a vision of the soul ascending through different realms, confronting powers that try to bind it, and moving toward freedom through inner awakening. Another text describes her as the companion of Jesus, a word that in the original language speaks less of social status and more of shared mystery, shared initiation, shared depth. These are not the traces of a marginal figure. They are fragments of a partnership, of a divine communion that threatened the story later powers wanted to tell. So why erase her? To answer that, we have to look at the spiritual and political storm of the first centuries. Christianity was not born as one neat, unified religion. It was a clash of visions. Some groups saw salvation as obedience to external authority. Believe the right things, obey the right people, and you'll be safe. Others, like the Gnostics, saw salvation as Gnosis, an inner knowing, awakening the divine spark within, Mary Magdalene's voice, in many of these fragments, aligns with the second path. Her teachings speak of the soul's journey past fear, ignorance, and controlling forces. She points to liberation that doesn't come from outside approval, but from remembering what you are. That is dangerous language to any system that wants to rule through fear and dependence. Imagine the problem she posed. A woman saying, "Divine authority is already inside you. Don't build a religion of control. Don't replace living truth with rigid laws." Even her number was turned against her. Some early traditions remembered Magdalene as a kind of 13th apostle, the one beyond the 12, carrying a wisdom the others could not fully contain. 13 was honored in many ancient streams as a sacred number, linked to the moon's cycles, to hidden months, to the mysteries of the feminine. But over time, that number was inverted. 13 became unlucky. Friday the 13th, an omen, a symbol of fear, not of power. In truth, it was never the number of darkness. It was the number of transformation, a secret code pointing back to the feminine principle that had been buried. Mary Magdalene doesn't just threaten a linear reading of history. She embodies the lost feminine in the heart of a tradition that became heavily masculine, legalistic, and hierarchical. In her we see not just a disciple, but a living symbol of Gnosis, of hidden knowledge, of a spirituality that refuses to be caged by institutions. And so across the centuries, she was recast. From divine teacher to prostitute, from apostle to penitent, from bearer of wisdom to symbol of sin, from first witness of resurrection to cautionary tale. But truth has a strange habit of surviving, in fragments of parchment, in whispered traditions, and in the restless questions of seekers like you. The real question is this: what exactly were her hidden teachings? What was so radical, so liberating, that it had to be erased from history? The answer might not just change how you see Magdalene, it might change how you see yourself. To touch Magdalene's hidden teachings, we have to read between the lines of history and listen carefully to what survives. In one account, the disciples are in despair after Jesus leaves. They fear the world, the authorities, their own future. But it is Mary who stands up. She speaks of a vision, the soul rising through different layers of reality, breaking free from forces that want to keep it bound. She does not describe salvation as obedience to external rules. She describes it as an inward liberation. The Son of Man is within you, she declares. She wasn't talking about a building, a ritual, or a priest standing between you and God. She was pointing to a presence already dwelling in the core of your being. This is the essence of her message. Salvation is not something handed down from outside. It is something remembered within. She even warns the others. Do not lay down extra rules. Do not build a new law like the old one, or you will simply create a new prison. In other words, don't replace living truth with another system of fear and control. In a world moving quickly toward religious hierarchy and empire, this was a direct challenge. Now consider the 7 demons that the official story says were cast out of her. In some deeper readings, these demons are not literal monsters, but inner conditions. Egoic garments the soul must take off: craving, ignorance, fear, arrogance, possessiveness, shame, and the illusion of separation. These are the forces that blind us. The ego can wear the soul like a cloak, pretending to be the master. But the soul knows better. The soul can see the ego. The ego cannot see the soul. That is why Magdalene's vision is so powerful. She speaks of the soul's ascent, of leaving behind everything that claims to own you. Along the way, powers rise to challenge the soul and say, "Where are you going? You belong to us. You are bound." But strengthened by inner knowing, the soul answers with a truth that cannot be chained. I was never bound. I am free. Her path is not about blind belief. It is about direct experience, inner awakening, remembering what you have always been. No wonder some of the male disciples resist her in the story. One questions whether Jesus could really have spoken privately with a woman, and whether they should listen to her at all. Another defends her. If the teacher made her worthy, who are you to reject her? Surely he knew her completely. Here we see the tension clearly. Magdalene represents a path that bypasses hierarchy, a spirituality that doesn't need permission from power structures. History tells us what tends to happen to those who threaten systems built on control. They are silenced, rewritten, reduced to symbols that serve the system. But if you are quiet enough, you can still hear her voice. A voice that says, "The kingdom is not a place you travel to. It is a reality you awaken within." Mary Magdalene was not just a historical figure. She is also an archetype, a symbol of something the world has always struggled to accept. The sacred feminine principle. The early church raised up Peter as the rock of external authority, the foundation of institutional power. His path became structure, order, obedience. Magdalene embodies another path, the path of inner knowing, intimacy with the divine, Gnosis. These two currents were never meant to be enemies. They were meant to balance each other, masculine and feminine, outer and inner, law and wisdom. When you silence one side of that equation, you don't create purity. You create imbalance. And that imbalance shaped centuries of how spirituality has been lived in the West. Some ancient writings hint at Magdalene's closeness to Jesus by calling her companion, not as a casual term but as one who shares in mysteries. This isn't just emotional intimacy. It's the intimacy of the soul, of two principles mirroring the same light. Some Gnostic streams speak of a bridal chamber, a sacred symbol for the union of masculine and feminine energies within and between human beings. Not simply romance, but a cosmic truth. Only when these polarities stand together can humanity rise into wholeness. In this lens, Christ and Magdalene are not just teacher and follower. They represent Christ Sophia, light and wisdom, masculine and feminine, in sacred union. Magdalene's image, the red garments, the alabaster jar, echoes far older lines of priestesses and goddesses, figures who held the mysteries of life, death, and rebirth long before institutional religion. Red symbolized life force, blood, creation, the mysteries of the womb. The alabaster jar symbolized initiation and transformation, something precious poured out to anoint, to awaken. Over time, this lineage was too disruptive to tolerate. A woman as spiritual equal, a woman as revealer of hidden mysteries, a woman who carried the memory of older goddess traditions into a growing religion, trying to define itself as separate. So her story was inverted. The Magdalene of Gnosis became the Magdalene of repentance. From teacher of liberation to symbol of sin, from first witness of resurrection to moral warning. It was theology used as politics, history written by those who needed her silence to keep their power intact. And yet her presence never fully vanished. In mystical circles, in esoteric threads, she kept returning, as symbol of wisdom, as lost bride, as the feminine face of Christ. Because in many ancient visions, no savior is complete without a counterpart, the one who mirrors and balances his light. Philosophically, she embodies the path of direct experience. She reminds you that the divine is not something far away for you to adore from a distance. It is something you must taste inside your own being. And like Magdalene, you too will face the voices that say, "Who are you to claim such authority? Who are you to speak of the divine?" Her story is your story, the struggle between conformity and authenticity, between external command and inner truth, between forgetting and remembering. So how do you bring Magdalene's wisdom into your own life? Her message was never, "Memorize this doctrine." It was transformation through awareness, through remembering and embodying the inner light. Her vision of the soul's ascent is not just some distant mystical tale. It's a map of what you face every day. The forces you must pass through are not located only in some other world. They are in your fears, your cravings, your shame, your doubt, and the stories that tell you you're small, dirty, powerless, or unworthy. Those forces say, "You belong to us. You are bound. You will always be this way." Magdalene's wisdom invites a different answer, a quiet, steady defiance. I was never bound. I am free. How many times have you felt chained by expectations, silenced by fear, dragged down by an identity that never truly felt like yours? And how would it feel to look those forces in the eye and say, even trembling, I was never bound. Magdalene also brings sharp clarity to desire. She taught that the soul wears the ego like a garment, and that the ego cannot see the soul. This is why so many attempts to manifest or create reality end in frustration. We try to manifest from craving. More status, more attention, more validation. Craving feeds the ego, but it does not free the soul. Her path calls you to loosen those cravings, to let go of the illusion that your worth depends on what you can acquire or perform. When the ego's grip softens, what flows through you can begin to align with your deeper purpose, not with the distractions that keep you asleep. How do you know when you're aligned? One simple key. You begin to see with the eye of the heart, not with the mind that doubts everything, not with the eyes that are fooled by appearances and roles, but with the subtle perception that recognizes truth by how it feels in your core. Your heart carries the vision of the soul. When you look from there, you begin to sense goodness, light, and presence already alive within you. Tonight before you sleep, you might ask yourself, where am I still bound? What desires are disguising themselves as truth, but secretly keep me small? What would it mean to see this situation, this person, this self-image, through the eye of my heart, instead of my fear? These are Magdalene's questions for you. Not a rigid checklist, not another spiritual rule. A living invitation. Will you choose to remember? Because ultimately, Mary Magdalene's story is not just about her, it's about you. Her erasure was never complete because she represents something archetypal, something that lives in the collective psyche. You can bury an archetype, you can twist its image, but you can't destroy it. It waits in the dark until enough people are ready to remember. Her message is dangerous to any power that profits from your forgetting. She reminds you that truth cannot be owned by institutions, that the spark of the divine does not sit locked in buildings or books, waiting for permission to reach you. It waits in you. When you begin to realize that you were never truly bound, that no one can own your soul unless you agree to it, you also begin to see why her voice had to be silenced. Because a human being who knows they carry the same living light that once burned in the great mystics and prophets is very difficult to control. Despite every attempt to bury her, Magdalene's wisdom still calls across time, in fragments, in symbols, and in the quiet awakening of people who feel something missing in the official story. But the real journey is not to build a shrine to her. The real journey is to recognize what she was pointing to inside yourself. Her teachings may have been erased on paper, but her truth remains in the questions that rise up from seekers like you. Those questions are seeds, seeds of freedom, seeds of remembrance. Magdalene's path is not about fear or guilt. It is about seeing through illusion. And beyond that illusion, you find something simple and astonishing. The same power she carried, you carry too. The silence has lasted long enough. Now it is your turn to remember and reclaim your inner authority. As Magdalene's voice rises again through people like you, may you never forget, truth can be hidden, truth can be twisted, but truth cannot be erased. If this exploration stirred something in you, I'd love to hear what moved you the most. Share your reflections in the comments. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to remember their own spark. And if you feel called to walk deeper into these Gnostic mysteries, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Gnostic Codex. Each week we return to the voices that were silenced, the stories that were edited, and the wisdom that still has the power to transform how you see yourself and the world. This is not just history. It is a living journey. And together we are helping to bring back a light that was never truly lost.